Patterns. I am coming to you from Sarasota, Florida today. I'm here with my girl Nicole from Wild Ginger Apothecary. And I actually came to focus on business and scaling. And that feels really intimidating to me because I'm somebody who, one, doesn't ever want to leave my children, because as somebody who believes in attachment parenting and co-sleeping and, extended breastfeeding, it feels like I am sacrificing the psyches of my own children to focus on my career, because one of my mental patternings is that I am a product of somebody who chose career over me, and that felt to me like it put me in many dangerous situations. So now part of my own psychological work is to recognize that I have to untangle that idea that actually if I focus on my business, that I am sacrificing the mental health and the physical safety of my children, because obviously I'm not. But it took a lot for me to even get on the plane and come down here, especially after a really rough week last week, just at the mothership, being the mother of the ship. And I really needed this. I really needed warm weather to sit on the ground and just to get here and to focus on something that was a little bit different than the sickness that was going on in my house and things like that. So what I want to say today is that you're going to be on my coin of this, right? But you're probably in relationships with people who are on the other side of the coin, which is this. A lot of people who are aligned to our frequency, we use shame to avoid a sense of grandiosity, right? So the inner critic that comes up in us is going to be saying, oh my God, every single time you feel adequate, it's going to say, nope, you should feel shame for that, because we want to avoid maybe polarizing on the other side of grandiosity. And then we attract people who we're in relationships with that actually use grandiosity to avoid shame, right? So both of those things are not us being in our Christ consciousness aspect. They're both egoic patterns in the psyche that we fear going to the other side of. So if I all of a sudden feel adequate, what if I start to get grandiose, right? So the second that I start to focus on things that even are actually divinely inspired, like I got here divinely. I didn't just I wasn't like, hey, let me go to Sarasota, let me find a business coach. Like, that's not what happened for me. I always follow my heart and I follow what divinity brings to me. But even in those cases, when I follow that, the shame that comes after that, for even one, being on vacation, how dare I have the right to be on vacation when there's other people in the world that would never get to do this, or my children are at home having to go to school or whatever it is. It brings up a little bit of shame for me. And I recognize this now. I can look at it objectively and recognize that. But I also recognize that I am in relationships with a lot of people who literally use grandiosity to avoid the same exact sense of shame that I'm experiencing. So both of us are in the mental egoic pattern that could be broken if we are actually in our Christ consciousness self. So what I want to say about that, and this is really the only thing I want to say, is we have to recognize that the inner critic that comes up, that even the sense, if you're somebody who is on the other side of the coin for grandiosity, I'm just feeling that sense of grandiosity right now, it's literally because you're trying to avoid shame. And those of us who avoid shame is literally because we're trying to avoid grandiosity. Or those of us who feel shame is literally because we're trying to avoid grandiosity. So neither of those have to be the way that it is. The job of this work is to get centered, is to be in the center. And when we are in the center, we're going to be centered in soul, spirit, psyche, and in the physical body. Hey! So that's all I want to say today is recognize that when the inner critic comes up and tells you can't or you shouldn't, or actually you are entitled, right? Recognize that is polarizing you psychologically onto one side of the coin, and both of those things mean that you're off center. So finding the balance of getting centered actually in a healthy, mature ego, that's the work. Just recognize when the inner critic comes up and do what you will with it, because if you're on one side, you go, oh, this is just my inner critic. Actually, it's trying to serve me. It's trying to help me not feel shame by being grandiose, or it's trying not to help me feel grandiose by feeling shame. And once you can get that space of objectivity and there's a gap there, then you can actually step in through Christ consciousness, the Christ consciousness that is you, and fill that with something that is more substantial than the mediocrity of the ego. Bye, guys. Have a great day.